Welcome to Anthology Training. In this series, we're going over the new additions to the version 9.6 that will be released early 2020. And in this training series, we're going to be using version 9.6.59. So bear in mind that some of the screens you'll see here may look a little different than later versions of 9.6 as those come out. In this third video, we're going to go over a real quick list of the topics we'll hit here. There have been some new fields added to the master file inventory, the F11 Print area. There's also a couple of fields that have been added to the query area. The other area we'll go over is a quick review on the import external tool that now allows you to update existing inventory records. It will warn you. Another area we've gone and done some enhancements are the reports. So we've got a small list of some reports that we've added features to and also some new reports we've added. And then lastly, we'll go over some of the new additions to the inventory query tool. There have been some enhancements, some long-awaited options for doing some all or some groupings. So why don't we start with the first area, the inventory F11 print. So when you are in master file inventory, you've had for some time now the F11 print option. And in this form, you can see all the different fields that you have available to either just print out to a piece of paper or if you want to export them to, say, an Excel file. And some of the fields that we've added for this round is the available number. And that the available number, bear in mind, is your on-hand minus any claimed on-hold units to give you your current available. And we do have the on-hand and on-hold fields in this list as well. Another field that we added is if this item is a stock item or not. So you'll be able to see if that's a true or false situation for those items. And just like any of the other earlier F11 print, when you either do a query or do an F11 print or both of those together, you do have the ability to save your different formats. So if there's a particular query you run regularly, there's maybe certain fields you want to export with those, you can save off those. So you have that query and the layout that matches it as well. The other area I want to show is the import external, that there is a new control, and we did review this a little bit in the first video, but just as a quick refresher for those who haven't seen that first video yet, when you go into tools and they do import external data, this screen has shown you the column to show you what items are already in your inventory. Those are the ones showing with the check mark. And previously, if you were going in and, say, changing a group of items, some may already being in your system. If I go to Actions, Reassign, and let's see, let's fix the department, and we'll just change a couple other little details just so we have some updates to show off. So the first thing I get, of course, is the, are you sure you want to make these changes? Yes. And then here's the secondary warning. This is the newer warning. It's going to basically warn you that you do have items that you've mass selected for that reassign, and some of those items were already in the inventory, and it's just warning you that you're about to change those items. Are you really sure you want to change those existing ones? So if you didn't mean to, you could say no, but for the most part, you probably want to say yes, go ahead and change those records. And now all those items have been updated, even the items that are in the inventory. Now I do have to finalize and save and post this for those changes to show up in that master inventory record. The next area I wanted to go over is some of the report enhancements that we've done. So when you are in the master file under reports, there's been several different canned reports we've created over the years. We continue to add to these, we continue to enhance them. So just a few of the reports that we've updated here. One of the first ones is the Business Center. And this is a pretty powerful tool. A lot of stores are using this. It's kind of the first thing the manager looks at in the morning, last thing they may look at night, just to kind of see, well, how did we do today? A nice quick, at a glance screenshot of where things stand. But the addition we've made is over on this Sales/Inventory tab, where you can set a particular date range. Maybe I want to see how I've done for the last several months. And depending on what I'm after, what I want to look at, what I want to group by or rather show by, I can choose departments and then hit F12 refresh. So there's all the different departments I have in my system. But the field we've added is down here for customers. So here too, if I set my date range, put in the show by as customer, I'll do F12 refresh. And so now here's a list of all my customers. And on the right-hand side, the details that apply are the sales at retail, at cost, margin, markup, and so forth for each one of those customers. Note that these left-hand columns for current, on hand, on order, those don't really apply in this case because we're talking about customers rather than inventory. But in this case, you want to look at the right-hand side numbers for that. And there too, you can sort by the sales at retail. Maybe you want to focus in on who's some of your top purchasers. So you'll be able to see that detail there as well. So after the Business Center report, we've added a consignment report. And that requires a couple of little bits to be aware of. So under the reports menu, there is now a consignment vendor report. And this very simply lets you pick your date range. Maybe I want to work on everything since January 1st up till today. Perhaps I want to look at all vendors just as a quick glance, or I'm after a specific one, either way. And I do have the ability to say do page breaks. That way I can get one nice clean page per consignment vendor or consignee. But I'll go ahead and leave that unchecked for the moment so we can see what I've got. When we do the F11 print, we can either print it, preview it, we can set it to a file. I will preview it here for a moment. So this is a sample of consignment vendors that I had sales for within the date range given. And in this case, I chose to have it print all on the same page. I could do a page break and have the second one be on its own separate page if I was using that to kind of show my consignment person a report of the actual units sold. Now this does hinge on one little detail. When you are setting up your initial consignment vendor under Master Files Vendors, your consignment vendor needs to have this new setting over here. Let me highlight that for you. The consignment vendor that you're going to assign those inventory items to and do sales against, there's a setting right here for consignment vendor. So we need to flag that vendor record as being consignment. Make sure you save your change. And then as you go through and start doing receiving, and then later do that report for the consignment vendor sales, you'll be able to see nice and cleanly those folks that were those inventory items by the particular source vendor and the date range and the ISBN and such. So just make sure that you do set your consignment vendor to have this checkbox checked. And it does require that you do receiving history as well for those items. So in fact, here are some sample receiving records that I had done for inventory items assigned to this consignment vendor. The next report I want to show you is some enhancements to the gift card history report. So if you have the optional add-on gift card, the plastic gift card module in which the gift cards have serial numbers, under the reports menu, you've had the gift cards and gift card balances report. In the gift card report, what you might consider the history report, we have added the ability to see what customer was associated with any given transaction. So let me just set mine up and I will choose to see all that detail. Let's see, let's do card number and then by date. And I can choose to focus on one card, but for the moment I'll just pick to do all of them. And we can, again, print, preview it, save it to a file. We'll just preview it for the moment. And so now here's my list of sort of the history of all the different cards. And I can see that in the case of card 101, at one point it was activated already. It was edited at some point with a note that it was a spoiled candy bar credit. The next one was redeem a little bit later that day, where we redeemed or used it as a tender on a sale, and the customer that used it was this one. So you'll be able to see, depending on if it was an activation or an increment or a redemption, what customer was involved. The next report is a new enhanced payout and pay in report. Previously, I believe it was just the pay in report. So now here's a payout and pay in option. Similar idea there. You would pick your date range. And if you're looking for just the pay ins or payouts as well, or either or, then you can set your date range, or excuse me, you can set if you want to sort it by transaction number or the customer, whichever way works best for you. But once you do a print, again, you can print it, preview it, save it to a file. We'll just preview for the moment. And so now here's an example of a payout and pay in report. Notice that payouts are pretty simple. It's really just a payout, what tender did you pay out, and the dollar amount, where if it's a pay in, you're tracking whether it's just a general other pay in or if this is a pay in from an account sale. So this would be a report to use to track, when did Joe pay us for that earlier house charge that we did with him. The next one is an addition to the sales history slow sellers report. The slow sellers option has been there for a while. So under the reports menu, if we go to sales history, you'll see that on the bottom left corner, we have these two boxes, and these have been there for a while. One is for best sellers, things that sold the top or the highest amounts, and the other is for the other extreme, the slow sellers. So in addition to this existing slow sellers option, we've now added this option to say don't include items that were recently received, items that maybe I've received them in the last 30, 60, or 90 days that, I don't want them coming up as a possible, quote, slow seller because they're just so new, I haven't had a chance to sell much of them. So you can use these settings to exclude those items. And quick note, when we're talking about slow sellers, in the case of the sales history report, it is looking at existing sales history. And the slow sellers is going to focus on items that actually did have sales, albeit low numbers, but did have sales. This is not going to include items, at least in the date range, that didn't have any sales. So by slow sellers, we do mean slow sellers, items that had sold within that date range, not items that didn't sell any at all. If you are looking to focus in on what items haven't sold in a while, what maybe is overstock, there are a few other tools for that. Look at the videos for the overstock returns or inventory cleanup videos for some suggestions on how to focus on that detail. The last one is an improvement or an addition to the sales transaction summary report. And that report is kind of new. It's probably only been there in the last couple of years, but under the reports menu is the sales transaction summary report. And over the last few years, we've added a few details to it. Let me just set my date range to go back a little bit. And maybe I want to focus on cash register transactions. And for the moment, I just want to see everything. Anything that was a sale, a return, a special order deposit, a special order pickup, a gift certificate, any shipping charges, gift cards, tenders, tax. So I can just say, show me all those items. And then down here in the details area, I can choose what it is exactly that I'm after. Do I want just a simple one-line grand total? Or do I want to see more detail by each transaction? Or do I want to really focus in on just the customer, or show me everything, or in fact an even larger report which is really for export only because there's just so much detail on it, it won't fit on a simple 8.5 by 11 sheet. The enhanced details gives you all sorts of additional information, but and those things have been there for the last little while. But in the version 9.6, the by customer option now shows you not just the dollar amount that the customer spent within that date range, but also the number of transactions. So if you're maybe doing some research on adding a frequent buyers club and you want to get a sense of how many transactions over the course of a year, this might be another good tool to use. So that's it for the report enhancements. There are lots of reports in here. Feel free to explore a little bit. You're not going to hurt anything by printing it out. You can always use the option to print preview, so you're not going to risk wasting a bunch of paper. There are lots of reports in here. And bear in mind, too, that every report can be greatly impacted by just a few settings. If you're in sales history and you want to see everything that was maybe in a particular section, maybe sorted by the customer name, you've got these detail and summary options. You've got total options. So just depending on what you're after that day, you might change the layout settings to get some very different looking reports. So the last area I wanted to go over is kind of related to reports, but the inventory query. We have added some new features to that, and that is under master file inventory. And the query tool is under the actions menu, construct a query. Now, when I run a query, it is essentially a more advanced keyword search. It has a lot of different filters, and then it shows you the results on the list tab so that you can, from there, look at those resulting records and make those decisions of maybe I do need to restock it, so I'll send it to a PO, or perhaps this item has just been around for so long and I have too many units, maybe I'll send them to a RI, a return invoice, or also known as an overstock return. So with the query tool, previously, you had an option to say, I want all or one department. Now you have what you might call all or some. Now, right now I've got it set to give me all departments, but perhaps I want to select a specific set. Let's see, I want maybe my new book department and this one called needs books or needs department. That was sort of my shorthand way to remind myself I needed to go back and clean those inventory records up. So I can use this field picker on the left to pick the different fields I'm after, and then bounce them over to the right hand side using these icons. And now I can do F12 select. And you'll notice, see how it says multiple of 4? And that's just showing you kind of a quick shorthand that you have more than one. You had 4 separate selections. And when I mouse over that, you'll see it pops up a skinny little label showing you what those selections were. And note too that I have this set right now to equals these multiple departments. But on the reverse, let's say I want to get everything but a couple of departments. So I would set that first value to be not equal. That's the greater than and less than sign. That's a common coding way of saying not equal. So in this case, perhaps I want to get everything but my calendar department. So by saying not equal to calendar, right there, I'm able to say I want to get all my departments, but I don't want to look at my calendar department, exclude that list or that group from that list. So you can see you've got the all or some selection tool on all the other major classification fields like section, media, publisher, distributor, and so forth. Another area up in the top right-hand corner here is now we have an and as well as an or option, otherwise known as a Boolean and or control. So what this is going to let me do, and let me simplify this a little bit here. So if I wanted to grab just that new books department and that needs department, maybe I need to do a little cleanup and do some review. So if I'm going to set this to give me items that are in these 2 departments, the needs department or new books. And right now I'll say and, where the on hand is greater than 25. Actually, let's say 20, so I can have some good records back. So, and this is actually kind of the default previous behavior. Previously, when you used all the different filters on this query screen, it was a bunch of and statements. Now with this or option, you can split it out a little bit more. So let's just show you what it looks like when I run this guy with a command of give me anything in these two departments, and as well, those items in both of those departments must have at least 20 units on hand. And again, like before, I can save those queries. I'll go ahead and run it. I'll skip saving the query for the moment. So here's any item that is in those two departments and have more than 20 units on hand. And as well, see if I can show this in the screen a little bit. There is now in the top header area, right up here, we're going to show you the number of records that resulted from that query as well. Let's say I was looking to instead focus on items that were in those two departments or had more than 20 units on hand. So real similar idea there. I can go back up to my actions, construct a query, and in this case, I'll say, yes, I want those two departments. And I didn't save this one. I could have done that earlier. But now I can say I want these two departments or anything that has a very large on-hand amount. So let's try 30 units. And again, I could save that. I can do save settings just to temporarily save it, or I can do F10s to actually save that query for another day. I'll go ahead and run this. I'll skip saving for the moment though. So now here's anything that is in those two departments or has more than 30 units on hand. So in the case of my stationery item, this item is in the stationery department, not one of those two departments I chose, but it had more than 30 units on hand. So if I look through this list pretty quickly, there are probably a few other items in this list that are not in those first two departments, but do have at least more than 30 units on hand. For those folks that are very savvy when it comes to generating reports and familiar with nested Boolean statements, bear in mind that this construct a query screen, it is fairly simple. It's not really laid out to do very in-depth several multi-layer nested Boolean statements, but with the select or the all versus some settings, that should let you get pretty close to narrowing down those results and get more focused on the details that you're looking for. If this still isn't quite enough to get those really complex filters that you want to do, you might still consider that it's good to export this to Excel so you can do any other filtering and data massage and layout arrangement that you might want. That is about it for the last of the changes, or at least in the early 9.6. This is being recorded on April 3rd, 2020. So over time, as we add more features to 9.6, it will be version 9.659 or higher. You'll see that the screens might change a little bit more. We'll probably be adding some new features, but keep us posted if there's any questions. Otherwise, we'll end this series and we'll see you in the next one.